Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the editor-in-chief of the Journal of the Indians of Science, Professor Ananta Suresh, and all the editorial members of the journal and the Office of Communications, it is my privilege to welcome you all to the launch of the 100th volume of the Journal of the Indians of Science. We have here for you a short and interesting program in which we will hear past editors' reminiscence about their experience with the journal, followed by the official launch of the 100th volume by the chief guest, Professor CNR Rao. As many of you may know, starting from 2007, the journal is a platform for multidisciplinary reviews. And since 2017, it is co-published with Springer. On this occasion, we have with us Springer team to whom I extend a warm welcome to. Let us begin the program. I request Professor Anant Suresh to please open the event by a formal welcome address. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I warmly welcome all of you. When a journal celebrates 100 volumes, one can speak volumes about it. In the next 100 minutes, including a small exhibition as well as high tea, you will learn a lot about our journal. We have many distinguished people who have supported the journal in the last 105 years. There is a little arithmetic mismatch that you will hear why, because journal started in 1914 and we are celebrating the 100th volume release of that in 2020. First, I would like to welcome Professor CNR Rao, who is going to release the first issue of the 100th volume. As a director, as a former director of the institute, he also has supported the journal in many ways. In particular, in his tenure, two special volumes were brought out, one to celebrate centenary of Ramanujan, another for celebrating C.V. Raman. And I welcome our director, Professor Anurag Kumar, who incidentally also was on the editorial board of the journal in early 90s. And in fact, all the directors of the institute have been ardent supporters of this journal right from the beginning. Our first director, Professor Maurice Traver, published two papers, the first paper and the last paper in the first volume of the journal. And the editorial board actually formally was set up much later in 1971. You will hear a lot of history, but I am just trying to give you a gist of what happened in the last 105 years. Directors and librarians were taking care of the journal as being the chairs of the editorial committee. In 1971, the first editorial board was set up with Professor J.N. Ramachandran as the chair of the editorial committee. And after that, several distinguished faculty have served as the chair of the editorial board, Professor Mukunda, Professor Vijayan, Professor Andarnayagam, Professor S. Krishnamurthy, Professor M.S. Shaila, Professor L.M. Patnaik and Professor T.N. Guru Rao. All of them couldn't be here today, but it's my pleasure to welcome Professor S.S. Krishnamurthy, Professor L.M. Patnaik and Professor Guru Rao, who are the past editors of this journal. Also, it's my pleasure to invite all the library staff and the librarian, because they have played a key role in supporting the journal for a very long time. And this is actually a journal of Indian Institute of Science, but I think it's right to say that it's actually a journal by IISc for IISc, because for many decades the journal has published the research work done by faculty of the institute and students of the institute. It's actually basically not of, but for and by us. And this journal actually transformed to current shape after undergoing many changes. All the changes that a journal could possibly experience, the journal has experienced. We will hear about it. And in 2007, Professor Balaram, whom we miss in this function because he is out of town, he and the editorial board at the time, Professor L.M. Patnaik was the chair of the editor and other members, they transformed this to this current form, which is a multidisciplinary reviews journal. And Professor Guru Rao has been the editor-in-chief of this journal since 2007 until recently, 2008 actually. And the administration of the journal transferred from the library to, at that time, Office of, at that time it was Archives and Publication Cell, which is now Office of Communications. Professor A.G. Menon, who is in the audience, and Professor Abhinandanan were the chairs of APC at that time. Now Professor Kaushal Verma, he is the chair of Office of Communications. They have been supporting this journal, and the staff of OOC, I welcome you all. Also, in about 3 years ago, Springer became our co-publisher of this journal. I welcome Swati Maharshi, who is here, and Sonal and Suvira Srivastav, who are our partners in publishing the journal currently. And Professor Arunan actually noticed the interesting coincidence that you see in the poster. It's not only 100 years of the volumes of the journal that we are celebrating, but also 100 years of hydrogen bonding. There is an interesting connection. Professor Gurra will explain that a little later. And I welcome all the speakers, authors, and participants of this workshop on hydrogen bonding that's being held today, also tomorrow. And finally, I would like to welcome, even though she is the compere of this event, Ms. Kavita Harish. In fact, she has been the kingpin of this journal since 2007. She handles all the administrative matters and more. And I was thinking about something that survived 100 years. What do people say? And some management experts who have analyzed organizations that have survived for 100 years or more, they found 3 things that are common to all of those. Apparently, first, all of them strive to be better and not bigger, and they are radically traditional, and they go for a disruptive edge from time to time. All 3 are true of our journal. Our journal has been getting better through various transformations, and we are actually radically traditional in some ways that if we actually look at the entire history. And we had a disruptive edge. In 2007, we became a multidisciplinary reviews journal. And as a journal of IISc, by IISc, and for IISc, I'm sure it has a great future, just like our institute. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I now welcome our director, Professor Anurag Kumar, to give an opening remark. I request Professor Anand Suresh to present a welcome memento to director.
Thank you very much. I think I'll just keep my remarks very brief because we are running against time. We have to finish quite soon for the other events to take place. I just want to add my own words of welcome to what Professor Anand Suresh has already said, to all the dignitaries and all the people who have run this journal for many years and currently run the journal. I just want to recall things that you'll probably keep hearing again and again. I just want to say a few words about the journal. This was Professor Maurice Stryver's idea, I suppose, when he was director, to start a journal for contributions of this institute's research. Since its inception, 105 or 106 years ago, there have been several landmarks that have been sort of placed, milestones that have been placed. There was a Golden Jubilee issue. Then there were issues in honor of Ramanujan and Raman, which were published in the directorship of Professor CNR Rao. And then there was an issue of 100 papers in the first 50 years, which was published in Professor Guru Rao's editorship. Today, we are going to release the 100th volume, even though it's 105 years, simply because of some mix-up with the numbering of the volumes many years back. It so happened that this volume is numbered 100, even though it's probably 100 and something. I would just like to add one thing, that when this journal began, it was a journal to disseminate research done in IISc. But today we are in the era of publication counts and HNDCs and citation counts, and people prefer to publish their work in top venues. So Because of the paucity of submissions to this journal, around a decade back, Professor Balram decided to make it a reviews journal. And I think now if you pick up a copy of the journal, I picked up one about a few months back, and I could learn current activities in machine learning very quickly from about 4 or 5 papers there. So I think if you want to learn some area quickly, know what's happening in the area, pick up a copy of our journal, and you'll probably be able to get a glimpse of what's happening in that area very quickly and in a very lucid manner. So thank you for having me here, and welcome to everybody again. I wish the journal all the best for another 100 years. Thank you.
Today we have here with us Professor S.S. Krishnamurthy and Professor L.M. Patnaik, both of whom were associated with the journal for many years. To begin with, I would like to invite Professor S.S. Krishnamurthy to please share his experiences. I request Professor Anant Suresh to present a welcome memento.
Professor CNR Rao, Professor Anurag Kumar, Professor Arunan, the organizer of the symposium, the editor of the journal, the members of the editorial committee, and dear friends, invitees, and participants of the symposium. It's really given me a great pleasure to be here this afternoon. We are celebrating 2 centenaries today. One is the centenary of the hydrogen bond, which is being organized by Professor Arunan. And the second is the 100th volume of the Journal of the Indian Institute of Science. It's really a landmark achievement for a journal to complete 100 volumes, in spite of a lot of trials and tribulations and difficulties it had to undergo. See, my own association with the journal started in 1987 as a member of the editorial board, when Professor Vijayan was at that time editor. And then later on, from 92 to 94, 93 and 94, I was the editor of the journal. This is what happened during the period when Professor CNR Rao was the director, and I am grateful to Professor CNR Rao for the support and guidance he has given me throughout my career here, both as a student and as a faculty member in later years. It was really very difficult times many times. Things were moving very slowly. You know that those were the pre-internet days. Email was just coming into vogue, and many things have to be done by regular correspondence and mail. And papers have to be sent by regular mail, sometimes surface mail. And as you know, many times you see from the time of submission to the date of publication, sometimes more than a year or a year and a half would have elapsed. And also in those days, we know that we have to send to the referees self-addressed envelopes, stamped envelopes, for them to return the reviews. See, so these were the very difficult times, and we always found it, and I had excellent support from all the editorial board members, and it also provided an opportunity to interact with many of the academics at the institute as well as elsewhere. This was really a very golden opportunity in that sense. So even at that time, we had the paucity of submissions was a great issue, and we are struggling to fill the journal issues. And it was thought even at that time to remedy this situation by bringing out several thematic issues. See, a few issues come to my mind. One is organic synthesis, nucleic acids, parallel computing, and such as these were genetic engineering. These were some of the thematic issues which were brought in those days. And also, and later on, of course, it was also decided to publish some of the IISc thesis abstract, both MSc and the PhD thesis. They were extended abstracts which were to be submitted when the student was to take up the comprehensive examination. Along with the referee's report, we had to send a 4-page summary of the thesis, 4-page abstract. It was called an extended abstract. 1-page abstract was for the Senate members for the circulation, but then the 4-page abstract was printed in the journal. I think this continued for some time and later it stopped. And slowly the journal evolved, and finally you see after several avatars, which I think Professor Guru Rao will amplify, it has now reached the current stage where the multidisciplinary review format is thought to be the best for the journal to survive and also disseminate the new and current state of information on any particular page. Now this coming to this, specifically to this 100th volume, the theme of this 100th volume is of a personally great interest to me. I see there I must say that my encounter with the hydrogen bond began as a PhD student. We have 2 papers published along with my supervisor, Professor Soundararajan, in Journal of Physical Chemistry and Tetrahedron in 1969 and 68 respectively, and they deal with the experimental and theoretical studies on electric dipole moments of halogenated aliphatic alcohols and carboxylic acids, where we had to reconcile the dipole moment experimental data by postulating hydrogen bonding interaction between the hydroxyl hydrogen and the acceptor atom, X is halogen, O or N, at the beta carbon atom. Of course, these conclusions were supported by the spectroscopic studies reported by people elsewhere. So in this sense, this also on subsequent research work involving in my own group on the structure of several phosphorus and nitrogen compounds, phosphazines, phosphazanes, both cyclic and acyclic, their organometallic complexes, calixarine functionalized phosphides and their metal complexes, where in the crystal structures we have observed numerous instances of various types of inter and intramolecular hydrogen bonds, including CHX, X equal to O, N, and CH pi interactions. It will take a long time for me to describe all these in detail, but so I am very happy to see that this hydrogen bonding continues to be a thriving area even after 100 years, and the new nuances and insights are coming to the fore in this field. So it is particularly pleasing for me to be present on this occasion when the 100th volume of the Journal of the Indian Institute of Science is being released, and which is on a topic which is of great interest to me. I wish the journal a great future, and I am sure the subsequent support from the present director and the subsequent people at the administration, the journal will scale new heights and in the next 100 years. So with these words, I would like to again thank all the organizers of this function for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on this occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your experience. I now request Professor Kaushal Verma to welcome Professor L.M. Patnaik to share his experiences.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. Revered Professor CNR Rao, Director of the Institute, Professor Anurag Kumar, Deputy Directors, faculty members, former editors of the journal, students and delegates to the conference, and the staff members of the archive cell who has been supporting the journal. As was mentioned, the journal is a bit younger than the institute. It started somewhere in 1914 and it has come a long way. My association with the journal has been during the period Jan-February 2002 to October-December 2007, essentially for a period of 5 years. I took over from Professor M.S. Shaila, who was the earlier editor. So when I took over with our team of editorial staff members, we had a tough challenge. There was a huge backlog of papers, and those days, as was mentioned, we used to publish thesis abstracts, book reviews, other than contributed papers. So because of the huge backlog of papers, we found it extremely tough to publish the issues on time. And there was other compounded problems. The journal used to be printed outside the institute campus. So buffering, interacting with the publisher was a big problem, printer and the publisher. Everything had to be done manually. And we used to have probably only one staff member, Mr. CNR Rao, who used to manually check everything. And during the identification of the reviewer process, we used to find a number of cases of plagiarism. Okay? There was no Turnitin in those days. And we decided to have a web version of the journal after taking over the next year itself, that is in 2003. And the decision was to discontinue publication of the dissertation abstract, which they will be available on the website of the institute. And we had only the book reviews. Even with that, we found it extremely tough to sort of essentially synchronize with the timeline and publish the journals on time. So the editorial board has had a lot of discussion, and up to that time, the journal was bi-monthly, used to have 6 issues every year. And as I mentioned, there was a huge backlog and there was no continuous inflow of papers. So there were discussions, as was mentioned, somewhere around 2006-07, Professor Balram said, maybe we should think of closing the journal. And the editorial committee, the editor, we were all highly emotional. The journal has seen something like 92 to 93 years of its existence. We said we should continue with the journal, come what may. So there were a number of discussions as to how to continue with the journal. So there was a suggestion from Professor Balram, and the editorial team also discussed that we should have, with in the new avatar as was mentioned, Journal of the Indian Institute of Science, a multidisciplinary review journal. So we will take review articles contributed by the faculty members, even by outsiders. Okay? So we agreed to that. It is easy to agree, but the next challenge was how do you sustain it? Because we agreed to do that somewhere around 2006-07, the issues had to be printed. So luckily, we could convince some of our young colleagues to be ready with the first few issues. So in 2007, we had 4 issues already lined up. That is one on nano and micro technologies by Professor G.K. Anand Suresh. The next issue was recent trends in crystallographic, the Indian scenario by Professor CNR Rao, and again one more by Professor Anand Suresh on micro and nano technologies, and there was one more by Professor Rangarajan on recent developments in mathematical sciences. And further down the line, we had some special issues by Professor Modak on biological engineering, by Professor Vikram Jairam on nanostructured materials. We could convince our colleagues to be ready with these issues, and the first issue had to be printed at a very short notice. Professor Anand Suresh was ready, and we could get excellent articles from Professor Naukant Bhatt, Professor Ganapati Ayappa, Professor Krupanidhi, Professor Rudra Pratap, Professor K.N. Bhatt, Professor S.K. Viswas and others were the first issue. So then onwards, we have a continuous flow of these issues, and as was mentioned, when the institute was thinking of celebrating the centenary, so in the volume 88 issue, that is numbers 3 and 4 of 2008, so we said from the years 1907 to 1957, this during the 50 years, whatever papers were published, we could take that and publish in the form of reprints. Okay, so we could identify some of the archival papers, as was mentioned, 2 papers published by the first director, Professor Maurice Travers, and there were papers of Professor Satish Dhawan, and papers by Professor G.N. Ramchandran, paper by Professor Sir C.V. Raman, and Professor K. Srinivasan. Number of these papers were extracted. I think Professor CNR Rao will give details of that. We could have this special issue. Other than that, from other departments like biochemistry, electrical technology, we had that. Okay. So primarily, the challenge during that period was essentially to sustain the journal in some form, because that was one of survival. We were asked to close the journal, but then we said we will start it in a new avatar, like in the form of a review journal, and that is what has been continuing till today. It has been a pleasure working for the journal, particularly during the transformation stage. And at that particular instance, I also had to leave to go to Pune to take over as the Vice Chancellor of Defence Institute. That was really a crucial period, and Professor CNR Rao took over from that point of time. Professor CNR Rao and Professor Anand Suresh have done a wonderful job from that point onwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Professor Guru Rao was the editor-in-chief of the journal from 2008 to 2018. He will be taking us through a brief history of the journal. Professor Guru Rao, please. I request Professor Anand Suresh to welcome Professor Guru Rao.
Professor Rao, Professor Anurag Kumar, all my colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a pleasure to be here and to present the history of this journal. It has gone through 100 years. In fact, it has gone through more than 100 years. I'll tell you why it has taken more than 100 years to come to the 100 years. These are the issues which, in fact, somebody in the morning remarked that the hydrogen bond has gone through a lot of turmoil, upheavals, and so on. I think the journal has gone through much more. Some of which has been already narrated by both the previous speakers, so that makes my job easier and also my presentation shorter. So in fact, I have written an article on avatars of this journal in the Connect magazine, which is now available online through the Institute. So let us start at the beginning and quickly go as fast as possible, maybe in a matter of 2 to 3 minutes, to cover the history of this journal. 19th January 1914, this is 105 years ago. So there was a meeting downstairs in the council room. The council sanctioned an initial amount of ₹1,000 to start this journal. In fact, it was a very generous amount, I think, 1,000 rupees in those days, with a mandate to publish scientific and technical articles. The first set of 10 articles initially submitted to the council cost 403 rupees, 13 annas, and 3 paise. You know, some of the seniors here will remember this. We used to count those 3 paise as a very valuable one, because in 3 paise, we could get a loaf of bread and eat happily. Those were the days. So this was a big amount, because out of 1,000 rupees, they already spent 403 rupees for the first printing. First volume of the journal contained 21 articles, and it was published during the years 1914 to 1918. The first article in this volume, entitled Borohydrates, was authored by Maurice Travers, the first director of the IISc, Ramesh Chandra Roy, and Nalini Mohan Gupta. I tried to get their pictures, but I couldn't get them. If I had that, I would have probably shown it. Volume 2, published over the next 3 years, contained 15 papers. Volume 3 and 4 contained 9 and 16 articles, respectively. This is the secret of why we are now having the 100th volume, even though we have finished 105 years. Since 1922, each year saw the publication of a single volume. In the early years of the journal, the director of the institute served as the chairman of the editorial board, and given IISc's British attachments, they adopted the policy of Royal Society journals, with section A dedicated to chemistry and section B to electrical engineering. In fact, these were the 2 departments which existed in the institute at that time. And it was the Bangalore press who involved the journal's publication, who were involved in the journal's publication during the initial years and later as well. And the institute library was in charge from 1951 onwards. 1971, there was a change, and that was the change which was already mentioned earlier. G.N. Ramachandran became the journal's editor, And I will just quickly read the extract of the annual report, which was produced in 73-74. In fact, that is the first time I myself saw the journal, because I joined this institute in 1971, and in those days we used to visit the library every day. Because otherwise we won't be able to know what is going on in any of the journals or whatever. There was no internet, no facilities of that kind. So we used to go to the library every day. In fact, we used to lift all huge volumes from the top of the rack, clean the dust, and then copy in a sheet of paper whatever the details, the abstracts of the journal and so on. Those were the days. So at that time I read it, and I read this extract. The extract from the annual report 73-74, the Journal of the Indian Institute of Science tries to foster the objectives of the institute, namely to carry out research in science and engineering, so as to contribute to the scientific and technological progress in general, and India in particular. The volumes 55 and the first issue of volume 56 of the journal were published during this year. The formation of the editorial committee, a new editorial policy, and changes in the frequency from quarterly to monthly, and the printers are of important features to the publication of the journal. The editorial committee consisted of Chief Editor G. N. Ramachandran, Associate Editor E. S. Rajagopal, and Executive Editor T. K. Iyengar, who was also the library. Subsequently, I will skip now and go faster because it has already been narrated by IISc and Patnaik. Subsequently, several eminent researchers from Institute donned the mantle of the editor, Professor Mukunda, Professor Sundarnayagam, Professor Vijayan, Professor Krishnamurthy, Professor Shaila, and then of course Patnaik. While librarians were the executive editors. N. M. Malwad and S. Venkateshan were the editors in this period. I must note here the contribution of K. Srinivas Rao, who was already mentioned by Professor Patnaik, who served as the assistant editor for several years. He did almost everything, literally everything from copy editing to producing the final print form for all articles. In fact, I remember he even corrected the final form with his own better English. He said, this paper is not having good English, I will correct it. I used to tell him this is not correct. You should never do the correction after the proof is read, but he never listened to me. He always changed the English. that was the adamant nature of our Mr. Srinivas Rao. I think it kept the journal going all right. In this period, the journal started including synopsis and PhD thesis, as was mentioned earlier. So I will cut it down except to say that the color of the journal, the front page of the journal was yellow in color. So the students, we used to say it is yellow journal. I don't know what it meant, but they used to say it is yellow journal and nobody read it. And so it lost its charm during these years. And in 2003, when Professor Patnaik took over, he mentioned all the details, so I will not go into the details except to say that he took over as the editor and formed a new editorial team. And he made really fresh efforts to publish peer-reviewed articles from the members of the institute. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I was his associate editor, and I had the privilege of serving as him as a member in this enormous efforts, because we used to go every lab and ask, sir, please give you an article this time to our journal, so that we can publish this journal regularly. So it used to, the cover design also was changed. So yellow was removed and it was changed to a blue color. And the quality of the printing also was improved. We could do some typesetting using computers and so on. So computers were becoming more and more popular. Very soon the initial excitement with which they processed this whole thing ended, because the institute faculty, their excitement diminished and they didn't want to contribute any more papers to the journal. So it became a real issue. And at that time, I must say, Kavita Harish joined as an editorial assistant. Along with Mr. Srinivas Rao, they overlapped with each other. I don't know how many times they fought, but eventually I think Kavita succeeded in taking over from Srinivas Rao, who retired at that time. In 2007, as was already narrated, Balaram, then the director of the institute, called the meeting of the editorial board and suggested closing down the journal. It was a pathetic situation for all of us because the entire editorial board felt that we should continue. Even though Patnaik was also going away to Pune, this became a real issue. The editorial members, however, put their efforts together, and after several hours of deliberation, this is the longest meeting the director had ever, I think, with the editorial board because it was almost 4 hours, after which Balaram came up with the idea of making this review journal. Such a review journal serves the important purpose of publishing reviews of selected research areas in a way accessible to researchers from different disciplines. A useful feature of these review articles are short explanatory notes. This is very interesting, appearing in the margins. I think the suggestion came from Anand Suresh. So we used to put short notes so that it will be available for researchers in a wide range, because it's not always an expert reads the review journal. They can also get some ideas about the terminology that is used. In 2008, a new subcommittee was set up and I became the editor. And the journal was moved to the archives cell. It was renamed Archives and Publication Cell, now the Office of Communications. IISc Press was established as an entity within the Archives and Publication Cell, bringing the institute publication under a single umbrella. And in these changes, the efforts of A.G. Menon, the first chair of the Archives and Publication Cell, were very helpful. I think he is here in the audience. So it was wonderful to work with A.G. Menon, because otherwise we would never have brought out these publications. Over the years, there has been a special issue of the journal published to commemorate important occasions. As was already mentioned during Professor CNR Rao's regime, the Golden Jubilee year of the Institute, after the Golden Jubilee of the Institute, a commemorative volume was brought up, the birth centenary of mathematician Srinivasa Ramanujan in 1987. And among other things, handwritten contents of Ramanujan's notebook were put together by K.G. Ramanathan. And there was another issue which was brought out in 1988 to commemorate the birth centenary of Professor C.V. Raman. A special issue of the journal commemorated the Institute's centenary year in the year 2009. In 2014, another special issue commemorated the centenary of the journal, carrying selected original papers published in over its first 50 years, 1940 to 1964. These papers were selected from the historical as well as the current scientific value. In fact, there was one paper related to hydrogen bond in this special issue. That was by Professor Jatkar. And he was probably the first person to write from India or working in the institute. I'm not sure, Professor Rao will correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was the first paper on hydrogen bonding which came from India, purely from an Indian. I'm not too sure, Professor. You will talk about it, okay, sorry. And then a new committee was set up and I handed it over after my retirement, the editorship to Anand Suresh. And they have now new members from different parts of the country, in fact, even from abroad in the editorial board. So there is a change in the editorial board. I was just looking at what Nature did when it finished 100 years. I just thought I will mention it. Nature celebrated 100 years. Arunan, you should make a note, and also Anand Suresh. There was a VIP dinner and a collection of brilliant historical articles was brought out as a special issue. And the introduction was written by Maddox. All of you know him very well. Many of you know him. Is it safe to look back? That was the first article. And in that, writing about so many things, he wrote 2 phrases. I will just read those 2 phrases because it's too long. I will cut short my presentation. The 2 phrases says, it remains an honest objective to win for science. That is one of the phrases I thought I liked it most. And the other one is an opportunity to change the world. So Nature had these issues, and I'm pretty sure our journal will carry it through. So the 100th volume of the journal is being published. And so you see the upheavals it has gone through. Just like hydrogen bonding, the hydrogen bonding definitions keep changing. The understanding of the hydrogen bonding, as I see from morning till now with the lectures, is still pending. I don't think we have understood the hydrogen bond fully well, and so also this journal. But this journal will have, I hope, it will keep publishing for the next 100 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I would now like to invite Professor Arunan, the guest editor of the first volume of the first issue of the 100th volume, to tell us a little bit about this issue.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am pleased to tell you about the first issue of the 100th volume. We have had 16 authors. It wasn't difficult to get articles. Most of them are experts. I contacted them and they readily agreed. In fact, 11 of them given in block are giving talks in this workshop. 2 others, Professor Gautam Desiraju and Professor A.C. Lagan, have their co-authors giving talk. 5 other authors from abroad, from Göttingen, New Orleans, Utah State, Bristol and Basque County, they could not come. They have submitted articles. And of course, I have this nice cover. You can read it once it is released about the hydrogen bond. This is continuing. To do apologies to the visually impaired. I didn't mean to insult them. Editorial desk, in fact, Anantha Suresh has written a beautiful editorial you should all read. He points out the 2 things which have already been mentioned. In 2012, there was a 100 years of hydrogen bond published in Nature. S.K.K. Jatkar and Nagamani Shamarao, this is the paper Professor Guru Rao was mentioning. He published a paper in 1943. The title of the paper is Hydrogen Bonding in Benzene. This is the paper we are celebrating today. This is Latimer and Rodebu's paper. This was published in 1920. I will just read once from this and I will be done. It says, ammonia adds hydrogen readily but little tendency to give one up. Hydrogen chloride on the other hand shows just the opposite tendencies. The Lewis structures were known, but he was drawing a structure like this for water dimer. This is basically the first instance a hydrogen bond was mentioned. That's why Linus Pauling says this is the first paper to celebrate this. And from the book of Metal and McClellan, they say it's an amazing fact that every word of the description remains acceptable in the context of chemical knowledge today. But the true historical importance of the statement derives from its pioneering invention of a frontier of chemistry. We are talking about bonds between molecules. That's something we are still discussing. Because incidentally, Professor CNR Rao had plans to write a review with Pimentel, the early centuries, and eventually he wrote it with a teacher of mine, Professor A.S.N. Murthy, who was in IIT Delhi. Because he had already edited 2 issues on C.V. Raman. I am done with this and I would like to invite all the dignitaries to stage and Kavita will take over.
Thank you very much, Professor Arunan. This brings us to the end of the first segment of the program. We will now be officially launching the 100th volume of the journal. For this, Professor CNR Rao, Professor Anurag Kumar, Professor S.S. Krishnamurthy, Professor L.M. Patnaik and Professor Anant Suresh will be on the dais. I request Professor Anurag Kumar to accompany Professor CNR Rao, please. We have to, yeah. May I request Professor CNR Rao to address the gathering, please?
Dr. Anurag Kumar, Dr. Arunan, other colleagues, distinguished members of Indian Institute of Science, including our dear students. Nice to be here. It's a long time since I have formally come to any function in the Institute. So I think a good academic one like this is not a bad one to come to. For those who may not know, there are many hundred centurions in India, maybe starting this year. Vikram Sarabhai, an old student of this institute, Satish Dhawan. So many may not know that. You may know, I don't know. Satish, I think there is going to be a very nice meeting here. Rudram Narasimha is arranging it, and he has asked me to be involved with it in some way. So that is 100th year. For those who may not know, this is also the 100th year of the International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry, of which I used to be president many, many years ago. So many centuries say many things have spent a century. Well, I'm particularly happy that you're having a special issue on hydrogen bond. I'll mention that later. As far as the journal is concerned, I'm getting frightened by the way journals are coming out. Even professional bodies like, let's say, Royal Society of Chemistry or American Chemical Society, major professional journals, societies like that, are increasing the number of journals they are producing. Let's give me one example. For example, I was involved, I was the first speaker to get it started, Journal of Materials Chemistry. They want to publish one journal on materials, the Royal Society of Chemistry. There was a special meeting in Bordeaux, I went all the way from Bangalore, everything went off well. Then they said, look, we want to have another journal called Materials Horizons. I was on the board of theirs for that. And then they said Materials Frontiers, then another one. And it goes on, one more there. Then they said nano has come, nanoscale. Then nanoscale frontiers. Then nanoscale advances. These journals are going on, and what the same publisher, the professionals will do that. Worse is a society which I admire, American Chemical Society. American Society, again, I was in the editorial board of the journals when it started, Chemistry of Materials, outstanding journal. Even today it is a wonderful journal. Then they said there is not enough. For applied materials, they said ACS, applied interfaces, applied materials, and interfaces. And in fact, I even published some 2-3 major papers in that. Then they said ACS, applied nanomaterials, ACN, applied electronic materials, and one more I forget. So, what do you do? In fact, what frightened me more was just less than a week ago, I got a letter and also some bar diagrams associated with some chemistry publications from Nature, the editor of Nature. And he showed China how much is published, India how much is. I was amazed by this bar diagram. Let me tell you. Let us say the bar diagram says China publishes per year this much, okay? And next to that, India publishes that much, Japan that much, Korea that much. So what they did was when you add all these 3 Asian countries, India, Korea and Japan, that comes to exactly half of what China publishes. So China is equal to double the number of papers of Korea, India and Japan put together. So how do you publish anymore? Of course, authors find some way of publishing. I'm not talking about authors. Publications, they're really exploding. Number of journals exploding. So this must be kept in mind by our institute, Indian Institute of Science, in seeing a new avatar of this journal, if you want to give it. And in fact, recently I was in a meeting of the Royal Society. They wanted me to come with some suggestions. They thought I publish a lot, so maybe I will be a good person to talk to, I don't know. We have come with some solutions to our Royal Society because the famous journal, Proceedings of the Royal Society, where it was an honor to publish. I remember when I was young, my God, I'm publishing Proceedings of the Royal Society. Today nobody reads it. It's a terrible reception. It is having a tough time, Royal Society. So they want to do something because everyone is jealous of National Academy of Science. And I publish every now and then in PNAS. I think PNAS has done an excellent job. A publication in PNAS is read and circulated with wide circulation. So we have to see whether Royal Society is wondering whether it should do something in a PNAS model. And they may do it, I don't know. Let us not worry about Royal Society. As far as this journal is concerned, I want it to succeed because it is a history and how to make it succeed, reasonably succeed, because it's very difficult to succeed in a big way today because of the infinite number of journals coming. So my own suggestion would be do something like PNAS. That what one could do is call it Indian Science Communications and Science Research Communication, Part A, Physical Sciences. I hope engineers don't mind. Engineering is part of physical sciences. That is true in Royal Society. Engineering doesn't have a separate division, it is part of physical sciences. So A, including engineering, Part B, all of life sciences. So including every branch of biology. In fact, see whether a communication, a lot of people publish. Reviews are difficult. You will get bad reviews, you can publish them. Good reviews, nobody will write in a journal like this. In fact, there are specialist journals now where They compete for even reviews. I write quite a few journal reviews, and they are usually in major journals, and they are read, of course. And how will you compete with such journals? Let us say even chemical reviews, which I am not very fond of, but it publishes a lot of reviews. Very difficult to publish reviews because it's difficult to make people write in India. Indians are very poor authors. India is one of the worst records in publication of books. I hope you all know that we don't write enough books, for example. We write a few, but not enough. So reviews, same thing. I mean, good reviews are difficult to get. However, communication, all young people would like to publish communication and still publish a full paper later maybe. And if you can make it competitive with the help of Springer and others, communication in general may be successful. I'm not going to say more than that. You can think about it. If you don't like it, just throw it out of the window. But I would like Institute to succeed. For me, for those who may not know, the last few minutes is about myself, my relation with the Institute. I used to play around in the Institute when I was a young boy, very young boy. I used to collect some of those seeds that used to fall off the trees. I don't remember. In Kannada, I'll call Guruganji. I don't know what it's called in English. Anyway, then I was in the faculty here 61 years ago. I joined the Institute as a faculty. And that is when I met Krishnamurti later as a student, and V. Krishnan, many of the old students. And even Padmanabhan, I've taught him in biology as a student. So, my association. As far as hydrogen bonding is concerned, one of the earliest paper of mine is with Kenneth Pitzer, first experimental study of the thermodynamics of hydrogen bonding using nuclear magnetic resonance, 57, I think. 57, Journal of Physical Chemistry. Those who may not know, from here, I published 3 papers in 1960 on hydrogen bonding in trifluoroethanol and thiolbenzoic acid, all kinds of things. I don't remember, to the transactions of the Faraday Society, from here in 1960, I think. Of course, since then I have published many things then. One should not worry about definition of hydrogen. That is not very important. What one cannot forget is my guru, Linus Pauling, gave a definition long, long ago. And he made it merely essentially electrostatic. And amazingly, very fine experiments eventually showed it was so really mainly electrostatic. And I think that is enough definition. And more than that, I think there is enough interest, other things to do with nitrogen bonding. And what people may not know is today, we now hydrogen bonded magnetoelectrics in the last few years. And very unusual things have come out of materials with hydrogen bonds. And in material science itself, hydrogen bond is playing very major role. In biology, of course, it is such a crucial role, I don't even have to mention. So I'm very glad that you have given me a chance to say a few words about hydrogen bonding. For those who did not mention this, in the golden jubilee year of this institute, I was not here at that time, everyone wrote an article here, the big volume of the Indian Journal of Indian Society. Many of you may not have seen that. It is a very, very nicely done issue, Golden Jubilee. They brought a special issue. I think it will be a very good idea to think of a Satish Dhawan volume, and maybe Vikram, if you want to do Vikram. Vikram did his PhD thesis in this institute under Homi Baba. The official guide was C.V. Raman. So it may not be maybe a good idea to have 2 special issues and think of a communication journal. I will send you one communication, you will do that. So lots of luck to IISc journal. Oh, by the way, what do you do with Journal of Indian Science? Forgot to tell you. When you call it a communication, rapid science communication, a Journal of the Indian Science below that. So I wish you all luck. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, sir. Now I welcome Ms. Suvira Srivastav, Publishing Director of Springer, to take over.
Thank you, Kavita. In fact, Standing in front of such an august gathering, what comes to my mind are few words of Stephen Hawking. He would say, "No one undertakes research in science to win prize. It is the joy of discovering something new that drives us." In fact, Revered Professor CNR Rao, Professor A.G. Menon, Honorable Professor, the Director of IISc, our distinguished former chief editors of the journal, our esteemed guests, as well as dear friends. Listening to the journey that this journal has come by, it is that joy, that dedication, that passion that reflects everywhere. And that is the hallmark and the foundation of this vehicle of knowledge dissemination. In fact, listening to all of you, I was reminded of the time when I walked into IISc Press along with Springer team. Swati was also part of that, and we started discussing about our co-publishing partnership. And that was the first meeting that we had, and the thought process resonated so much that one thing led to another, and we ended up signing a co-publishing partnership, which started in 2017. In fact, prior to that, Springer had already merged with Nature. We heard about interesting things about Nature. Of course, we don't have the VIP dinner, but we'll be cutting a cake like we did in Nature 100th volume. So when the company had already merged by that time, and Springer Nature journals had become one solid team. And at that time, when we started publishing journal, it has really come up a long way. Now, we heard about the editor-in-chiefs talking about the number of articles. Talking about the number of articles in last 3 years, we have already published almost 100 plus articles by now. And in very interesting subjects, we all know about hydrogen bond, of course, very interesting research topics, hot topics like machine learning, biomaterials in human health, transportation research, you name it, the journal is covering almost everything that we can think of. And what interesting is happening is that this research is also now available to be read via the e-journal packages of Springer Nature. And not just that, Springer also has so many read and publish deals wherein some countries have mandate to publish open access, or there are certain institute where the authors have open access mandate. They also can publish open access in the journal. So there is that flexibility that we provide in the journal. And another most interesting thing is the technology embedded, which allows any author published in this journal to share the article with their peers on any platform just by putting up a link. And anybody who has access or don't have access to the e-journal packages can easily read that particular article. That's a shared technology and without any violation of copyright laws. So when all these things are happening, all interesting phases, and what has happened in the transition is that the usage of the journal has gone up almost by 200%. So that's where we are now. The journal is into big leaps. And in fact, much like all of the 90 plus journals that we are publishing from India at this point of time, the journal is no way less in, as far as technology is concerned. In fact, you'll be surprised to know the moment we receive a manuscript in production, it is embedded with so many technologies in the back end that you can actually read the article on any device in any format. All those technologies are embedded in at the time of production. And the moment an article is published, it is immediately disseminated to various abstracting and indexing agencies. It goes to the agents that we sell with and any other customers that we have. It's all an automated process. So from what we heard from our editor-in-chiefs about sending for the peer review and how they were dealing with manuscripts, it's now a fully automated world, and that has in a way also opened up a plethora of opportunities for this journal. But at the same time, when we are at that global platform, the need of the hour, if you personally ask me, is not just to be present in those e-journal packages, but to drive those packages. And that is where this journal can actually play a leading role. getting the support that we have from this audience, getting the support that we have from our guest editors and from our authors, this journal is in the best position to lead these e-journal packages and showcase what we can do from this part of the globe. My team, I can assure you, is fully excited and will support you in this endeavor as much as we can, and we'll do whatever is best possible to take this journal to new heights. That's an assurance I would like to give everybody, including our current editor-in-chief. And last but not the least, words fail to, express the gratitude that we feel for various people who have been involved. So I would like to take this opportunity to invite Professor CNR Kumar to felicitate our revered Professor CN Rao. CNR Rao. Sorry. Yes. it's the yes. I know. Yeah. Followed by Professor A.G. Menon and our editor-in-chiefs. So can we please get the, yeah. Professor A.G. Menon, sir. We couldn't have done without you, so obviously. Thank you so much. This will be followed by felicitation of our former editor-in-chiefs. Professor Krishnamurthy. Professor L.M. Patnaik. Professor Guru Rao. As I said, we'll have a small cake cutting ceremony. I would like to invite Professor Anurag Kumar, Professor Anand Suresh, Professor Arunan to kindly do the needful. We'll just get the cake from there.
Thank you, sir. I request Professor Kaushal Verma to present a vote of thanks.
Before we conclude the program today, it's my pleasant duty to propose a vote of thanks. I'm sure you'll all agree when I say that centenaries are wonderful occasions, be it for institutions or platforms of expression such as the journal. These are moments where we not only reminisce, but we also look forward with excitement and enthusiasm for the future. But I must tell you one thing, these are not very easy to organize. So first and foremost, I would like to thank my wonderful friends and colleagues, Arunan and Anand Suresh, for all their wonderful camaraderie and easy humor, which made my life very, very easy. So thank you very much, Suresh and Arunan. Just being around with both of you removed any sensation of pain that I had in organizing this event. Thanks are also due to our chief guest, Professor CNR Rao, and Professor Anurag Kumar for taking time out of their busy schedules to be here with us today. The past chief editors, Professor Krishnamurthy, Professor Patnaik, both of whom I met just 5 minutes before the function today, and Professor Guru Rao, they all shared their experiences in working for the journal and also provided us with an interesting historical trajectory. Very grateful to all of them. And I would like to, on behalf of the Office of Communications, like to extend a very, very profound thanks to all the guest editors, the editorial board members, and the reviewers who have helped us in this process. Last but not the least, many thanks are due to the Springer team for being an integral part of the journal for several years now. And I'd like to thank you for organizing this little thing for us today. Very thoughtful of you, wonderful gesture. And a big thank you to all of you who provided very important back-end support, starting with Kavita, Geeta, and so on. The list is too big for me to individually name people here. And last but not the least, a big thank you to everybody here in the audience. Thank you for coming, being a part of this historic occasion. Thank you. Please do join us for high tea. Thank you very much.